I brought the question up earlier. I said, hey, do you think we're not taxed enough here in Connecticut? Apparently, there's folks that do not. Connecticut Voices for Children believe the tax burden in Connecticut is not excessive. And Governor Malloy has, by executive order, formed a 9-member task force to review policies, particularly on business tax exemptions. I don't think we're getting a bang for our buck here. State Senator Andrew Roraback represents the 30th District. Senator, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Pastor Will. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, sir. Hey, so, you guys are in the middle of these things. What do you think? Is this right, that our tax burden here in Connecticut is not excessive?
Well, let me first say, Pastor Will, that Connecticut Voices for Children does a great job advocating for disadvantaged kids in our state.
Okay.
And no one should try to diminish the work that they do. However, when they conclude that our tax burden isn't too much, I think it demonstrates how disconnected the policy end can be from the reality end.
Yeah.
Because time and time again, my constituents have said to me, Andrew, we're leaving Connecticut, we're moving to Florida, we're establishing our residency in Florida because the tipping point has driven us over the edge.
Sure.
And I'm the ranking member on the Finance Committee in the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that when we have public hearings about raising our taxes, people are not coming and saying to us, we're not taxed enough.
Well, Senator, to that point, Senator, I mean, I read the report from Connecticut Voices, and now I see this panel that Governor Malloy has established, and I'm saying to myself, yesterday we shared the report that Connecticut is the worst state in the nation to retire in, and based on factors like income tax, cost of living, all these things that for some reason other states are better. And so we opened the lines yesterday. We said, anyone near retirement age, and are you leaving Connecticut? And the phones were loaded. People leaving Connecticut, going to Texas, going to South Carolina, going to North Carolina, going to Florida. I had one woman going to Maine, of all places, but I mean, if you like the cold. So you mentioned a disconnect. Is there really a disconnect, or is this intentional because there is an agenda here that says, for us to reform education, we need more money?
Well, there's certainly an agenda that we need to target more money to different programs, but we're never going to be able to find the resources to do the good things in our society when we allow things like pension padding to continue. Mm-hmm. When the state's resources are being consumed by people that are retiring after 20 years of service at the age of 42 and collecting more in their pensions than their base pay.
Yeah.
And if we want to get resources to help disadvantaged kids, then we better start looking at reforming some of our pension plans, some of our retirement packages. There's a lot of money to be found if we're willing to stand up to the unions and make some tough choices.
How about, we're talking with Senator Andrew Roraback. Senator, how about, to me, there seems to be mixed signals coming from the governor's office. At one point in time, he'll say, we're open for business, and we love small business, and we want to promote small business. And then he recognizes and mentions in this executive order that Connecticut's business tax burden is the lowest in the nation. So now I guess we should look at business tax and say, well, you guys are not paying your fair share here. So are we open for business here in Connecticut, or are we not open for business here in Connecticut?
Well, I've been talking to my local pharmacists and the small pharmacies throughout my district, and if you ask them, we're not open for business because the governor chose to take away all of their business from state workers and state retirees. So we're really putting a stick in the eye of our Main Street small businesses. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the burden on business in Connecticut, it's not just the taxes that we impose on them, it's the regulations, it's the workers' comp costs, it's paid sick days. All of those things cumulatively are what are driving people to decide that they're going to pull up stakes and move elsewhere.
So what choices do we have at this point? I mean, Republicans are the minority party here in the state. What options do we have? What firewall do we have at this point to slow this train down? I mean, it seems like this governor is very effective. He gets an idea, he gets a concept, good, bad, or indifferent, and he just pushes it through at breakneck speed. So now we have this report from Connecticut Voices that our tax burden is not excessive. Now we have the panel to review the task force to review business taxes. Is there anything to slow this train down?
Well, that's where you come in, Pastor Will. We have to educate people of Connecticut about what the stakes are in this debate. You're right. This governor has gotten everything he has wanted. The Democrats in the legislature have not questioned him. They haven't engaged him in a debate. He has gotten his way. And we Republicans in the legislature, we've been pretty much excluded from the conversation when it comes to budget issues. And going forward, I hope that the governor will allow Republican ideas in terms of how we can save money in state government, how we can support businesses. But, with one-party rule, it's a dangerous thing. And the firewall is the people of the state of Connecticut who have to pay attention and call their state representatives and call their state senators and say enough is enough.
And your point about the firewall, at least when we had Governor Rowland, at least when we had Governor Rell, we had a little bit of a firewall protection against the ravaging General Assembly on the Democrat side that seems to have an insatiable appetite for tax money. Now it's the public. The public is the firewall at this point.
Well, I think so. I mean, certainly Republicans in the legislature will make as much noise as we can and try to shine a light on the overreaches, but we don't have the numbers to stop the train. Yeah. The only way the train is going to be stopped is if the Democratic legislators start hearing from their constituents that they're paying attention, the people of Connecticut are paying attention, and they're not going to stand for spending way beyond what we can afford.
Now, the next election coming up is so important for a number of reasons, and obviously it's important. I believe it's the most important presidential election in my lifetime. I think the future and the direction of the country as we know it is definitely at stake. But there's also a number of other local elections that are important. How important is this next round of elections to the state of Connecticut?
Well, Pastor Will, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm a candidate for the United States Congress.
I didn't know that. No, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
No, no worries. But I'm a candidate for Congress because I, like you, think that the election of 2012, if we don't get this country back in check in this election, I think 4 more years of Obama leadership could bring our country to a very bad place. So, I think that the good news is the public is paying attention as never before, and I think that people understand that we have very little time to try to bring this country back to what made it great in the first place.
Senator, I had speaking with Senator Andrew Roraback. So I had a call earlier this week from a woman who really painted a picture. She said, as important as the presidential politics are and national Senate, House, really what happens in your town and what happens in your state has in some ways a greater impact in your life personally than what happens sometimes in Washington. Now, we know that the House is pretty heavily here in Connecticut. We know the House is pretty heavily weighted to the Democrat side, much closer in the Senate. What would it take for here in Connecticut for there to be a Republican-controlled Senate in Hartford?
Well, we now have 14 Republican senators, so we need 19 to control, so we would have to pick up 5 seats. And the good news is we're already working to identify strong candidates, and if we could pick up the state Senate in Connecticut, that would put the brakes on the Democratic agenda because obviously they would have to deal with us.
That would be a firewall, so to speak.
That would certainly be a firewall. That would be a real political firewall.
Okay. Well, you know what? I think it's still a state worth fighting for. I'm not ready to throw the towel in yet. And I think there's a lot of good that still can be done. So, hey, thank you so much for being our guest this morning. Appreciate it. And best wishes in the future. State Senator Andrew Roraback.
Thank you, Pastor Will.